Vladimir Vernadsky described the action of life on its environment as the biogenic migration of atoms. By this, he meant that life distinguishes itself from non-life by transforming once inert and virtually immobile matter into a new form that expresses itself as animate, as living matter. Living matter represents the selective uptake, use, and deposition of the isotopes of every known naturally occurring element, including the radioactive ones. As such, each element proceeds through a unique path within the biosphere, and all paths intersect inside the living organism. The organism itself represents the singularity in this anti-entropic process. In this series of videos, we will take the viewer down a few of these paths as an initial approximation to an understanding of the entirety of the biosphere. In the human body, carbon outweighs nitrogen by 9-to-1. In the atmosphere, however, nitrogen outweighs carbon by about 6,000-to-1. Shouldn't you be made up of much more nitrogen than carbon? All of the major chemicals in organisms, such as proteins, nucleic acids, blood, and chlorophyll, are made of carbon, with only a smidgen of nitrogen. So how does it get into your body? And where does it go from there? Nitrogen typically finds itself in the atmosphere as diatomic nitrogen, a bioinert compound. It reacts with virtually nothing, and thus cannot enter the biosphere until its tight bonds are broken by a superior power. The roots of certain plants, such as the legumes, corn, and clover, have a symbiotic relationship with a special bacteria called rhizobium, which can whittle the nitrogen molecule down into 2 molecules of ammonia. This ammonia can then be used by the plant to form necessary structures. Other bacteria, such as Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter, which are associated with specific plant roots, further convert this ammonia into the nitrogen oxides nitrite and nitrate. Almost all plants depend on nitrates to build up their substance. Another, perhaps more important method for producing nitrates from atmospheric nitrogen is through the stroke of a lightning bolt. The bolt delivers so much current to the air that it cleaves both nitrogen and oxygen molecules in its path, freeing them up to bind with one another, forming both nitrites and nitrates. These are then precipitated to the ground through the rain, supplying the necessary nutrients to all plants. By far the greatest source of biologically active nitrogen, however, is through the hand of man. Human industry produces over 100 million metric tons of nitrogen fertilizer per year globally through the so-called Haber process. Humans have learned to replenish the soil with ammonia by planting nitrogen-fixing plants like clover for a season, then tilling them back into the ground. This ammonium fertilizer is mixed into the soil, from which Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter create all the important nitrites and nitrates. Typically, lack of nitrates are the limiting factor to farm productivity. Without this, the support of our population's nutrition would be impossible. Nitrogen gets into all other organisms through eating. Nitrogen exits the cycle through animal excrement and through the decomposition of dead organisms. Several types of fungi and bacteria take nitrogenous compounds from the organic matter and break it down into nitrates, ammonia, and eventually back into atmospheric nitrogen. Most nitrogen that becomes part of the biogenic migration of atoms, though, goes through many cycles before winding up back in the atmosphere. Nitrogen is but one element whose biogenic migration is necessary for the anti-entropic development of life on Earth. In order to sustain life in space and on other planets, nitrogen's role must be understood in the context of the other cycles within the biogenic migration of atoms. Stay tuned for more.